Welcome to the fifth class of this fresh start in 3D modeling. In previous classes, here's what we have covered. In class 1, we learned some fundamentals about 3D design. We went through the Cinema 4D interface. We learned some important modeling tools and we understood how subdivisions work. In class 2, we learned how to model 3D products, starting with cylinders as our primitives. We also practiced by modeling 4 different products with their detailed covers. In class 3, we learned how to create holes and extrude new shapes from an existing mesh. In class 4, we learned how to model a complete kettle by applying lessons from previous classes. In this class, we'll learn how to model a headset from a flat surface. We'll also achieve this using the symmetrical modeling technique. There are several ways you can take part in this series and also support the series and the channel at large. First, you can kindly subscribe to the channel to get more classes and to get notified for subsequent series and 3D content. And you can also join my 3D community on Telegram for more conversations, tips, challenges, resource sharing, and growth opportunities. Then you can also grab the Fresh Start bundle of clay image references. It consists of over 25 clay product references to help you practice and model more products after you take part in this training. Also, if you're into NFTs, you can patronize my Voguebot NFT project on OpenSea that has a crazy utility where I create a free animated fashion NFT for every piece sold. So let's begin. So I'll divide my viewport here and then I'll change this to my front viewport by hitting 1 on my numpad. Then I'll hit Shift A and under image, I'll click background to bring my image reference. Next, I'll drag this image reference up by going to the image properties here. And then on the default y-axis, I'll just slide this up to this point. Then I'll name this image reference. So I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard. Under mesh, I'll select this circle. So we'll turn this circle into a disk. Before I do any other thing, I'll bring this option up and I'll change the vertices to 10. So I'll take this circle over to the left side here. Now the key things to note when modeling a symmetrical object is that we'll be working with our grid line here. And the importance of that is to define where the first half of the product will stop and where the mirror modifier will then continue the other half from. So it's very important that you place your image reference at the center of your grid line here because we'll be using this grid line to identify the center of the object. So the next thing to consider is the origin of your object. So in order to be able to mirror this to this other half perfectly, we'll need to place the origin of this circle or this object at the center of the grid line. So anywhere on this z-axis will work for us, and we can use our cursor to place the origin of this object to the center. So currently by default your cursor is at world origin, but if you've mistakenly moved your cursor, let's go to cursor mode and just move it. The way to bring your cursor back to world origin is just by hitting Shift S on your keyboard, and under this option you select cursor to world origin, and that will bring your cursor from wherever it is to the world origin here. Then we'll go to this object and then we'll right click. And then under set origin, we'll then pick origin to 3D cursor. So now that will take the origin of this object, which is indicated by this yellow dot here. It will take the origin from the center here to where the 3D cursor is. So now if we add our mirror modifier, this object here will be mirrored to this other side perfectly. So let's do that. So I'll go to our modifiers here, and then I will add a mirror modifier here. So as you can see, this object has been mirrored perfectly on the x-axis. So this is the axis we're working with. So anything we do to our object here will reflect here perfectly. So let's begin. With this circle selected, I'll go to our edit mode and I'll make sure all the points are selected. If yours is not selected, hit A on your keyboard and then hit F to fill it. As you can see, everything we are doing here now is being reflected here. So the next thing to do is to create more edges here to suit how we want to model this product. So in my point mode, I'll select these 2 points. I'll hit J to join them. I'll select these 2 points, I'll hit J to join them, and then I'll join these other points this way. Next, we can go to our face mode here to scale and rotate this disc to start from this area so we can shape the headset. If you go to your object mode now, because the origin is set here, we might not be able to rotate perfectly. So if we just rotate this, you see that it will rotate from the point of origin. So with our face mode selected, let's just hit A to select all the faces. Then we can go to our move tool and you see we can drag this freely. So I'll hit R to rotate this and S to scale this. Now hit G to grab this and place it here. Now if I come to this area here, It's this point I want to extrude along this area. So if you're not comfortable with this, you can go to your point mode, select these 2 points, and then you can scale them out a little bit. So now I'll go to my edge mode and make sure this edge is selected so we can start extruding here. So I'll hit E to extrude. I'll hit E again and I'll just extrude it this way. To ensure that this point will snap perfectly to our grid line here, first let's make sure we're working in the wireframe mode here. So you can hit and hold Z and then select wireframe mode here. So when we make a selection, it will select all the points that fall within the selection. So let's turn on our snap tool here, and then under the options, let's check absolute grid snap. So once we move this once here, it should be able to snap to the grid line, and then we can turn our snap tool off. So under the mirror modifier, let's enable clipping so that it will clip it at this point where it joins. The next thing we'll be doing will be to extrude these faces to then create this detail here. So I'll go to my face mode, I'll hit A to select all the faces, then I'll right click to extrude faces along normals. So once I just drag this out, you see that it's clipped at the top there. So I'll drag this and drop this here this way. Then I'll select all these faces again. Then before I extrude, I'll insert the face. So I'll insert the face a little just to create an interesting detail there. Then I'll right click and then I'll extrude faces along normals. I'll just drag this out to this point here. So let's fix the top area here because we want this to still be clipped. So because we inserted the face, it created this space here. So first let's turn our mirror modifier off and we can disable clipping for now. So I'll just select this face here and select this face here. So all we need to do now is select this point and then snap it back to the grid line. So I'll go to my point mode and I'll select this point here. Then let's enable snapping. And once I drag this, it should snap. Then I'll select this point, I'll drag this and it should snap. Once I put my mirror modifier back on and I enable clipping, here's what we should have. So first let's deal with this detail on the inside. Remember to turn off your snap tool so that you can move freely. So now I'll select this point here and I'll just drag it out this way. I'll also do that here and I'll drag it to this point. And I'll do that for the rest here and I'll just shape them appropriately. Then for this area, I'll go to my face mode, I'll select all these faces. I'll hit I to insert the face. Then I'll just drag those parts out this way and I can scale it to match the reference. So let's just rename this to body. So let's add a cylinder to shape this area here. So I'll hit Shift A and I'll add this cylinder. And under the options here, I'll make sure this is set to 12. I could use 8 or 10. But let's use 12. Then under cap fill type, let's just set this to triangle fan here. So I'll scale this first, I'll drag it here, I'll set the origin to the 3D cursor, and then I'll add a mirror modifier. So now let's scale and rotate this appropriately. I'll go to our edit mode, make sure I'm in our face mode, and I'll hit A to select all the faces. And I'll just make sure it's placed at the starting area here. So I'll select all these faces here. I can use C to make that selection. Then I can set the orientation here to normal, and then I'll just drag this down to this point here. So now I can begin scaling. So I'll hit S and then I'll just scale this. I'll hit G and I'll grab it. I'll hit E again and I'll just extrude it this way. Then here to take it inwards, I'll insert the face. And I'll just drag that inwards this way. Then I'll hit E to extrude that inwards like this. And I can insert the face. And I can just drag that inwards. So now let's add some supporting edges before we subdivide this. So I'll hit Ctrl R on my keyboard and I'll add an edge here so that this corner will be tight. Now switch to object mode, select the body here and go back to its edit mode. So here I'll add the supporting edge. I'll hit Ctrl R and add a loop cut here. I'll add another loop cut here to make this sharper. And I'll also add loop cuts here and loop cuts here. And for this area, I'll add one loop cut just at the center here. I'll add a loop cut here also. So let's add the subdivision surface and preview what we have. I'll right click and then I'll change the shading to smooth. Then I'll do same for here. I'll add subdivision surface modifier, change the levels to 2, I'll right click, and I'll change the shading to smooth. So here I'm going to add some more loop cuts to this to make the edges more defined. So let's put the subdivision surface off for now. I'll go to our edit mode, I'll hit Ctrl R, I'll add a loop cut here, add another loop cut here, then I'll make a loop selection here, Shift Alt and select, then I'll slide this up, hitting G twice on my keyboard. Then we can just create an interesting detail here. So I'll go to our face mode, and I'll select this loop here, I'll hit I on my keyboard to insert the face, then I'll right click and then extrude faces along normals, then I'll just drag that inwards, and then here I'll add loop cuts to hold this tight here. Then for this area here, I'll go to my face mode, I'll select this loop also, then I'll select these faces here, and I'll just hit S to scale them inwards a little bit. So let's subdivide this to see what we have. So I'll put my subdivision surface back on, and this is the shape we should have. Thank you for joining this class. In our next class, we'll cover basic animation, material creation, lighting, and rendering. So ensure you subscribe, and remember you can support this initiative by grabbing the product reference bundle in the description below, and you can also support by getting a Vogbot NFT on OpenSea, where you also get a free and limited fashion NFT for every piece bought. All this information can be found in the description below.